we are talking Plankface. This one is directed by Scott Schwimmer and stars Nathan Barrett and Ellie Church. And this is a kind of slasher movie in a way. The production company who made this movie, who Scott Schwimmer also has directed a few of these movies, tends to make kind of what I would consider kinky horror movies. I've seen a few of them. Harvest Lake was one, for example. And they tend to have a horror movie idea with some type of kinky element to it. And Ellie Church, I believe, is pretty much in every one of these kind of movies from this production company. So what's the story of this one? So it focuses on this couple who are going hiking and camping in the woods. And initially they come afoul of a rapist, and then who is completely unassociated with what comes next, which is a kind of a feral band of cannibals that are living out in the woods, who decide that they want to take the guy, the male out of the campers, kind of kidnap him and ultimately coerce him into becoming their kind of new alpha male to kind of lead their little group of cannibals and kind of like feral women and things like this. And what will happen? You'll have to watch the movie to find out. Now, there will be spoilers in this review because I have to kind of mention some of the things that we'll talk about, but I feel that's not really a problem because the movie spoils its own premise by its own artwork, is all I'll say on this. But let me tell you what will work first of all in this film. I think the production design here is very good, and they have been for all these movies that I've watched from this production company. Always quite slickly produced and have this air of kinky menace through the movies, and this is true of this film, and it kind of hangs over it, and it's filmed in a very artistic manner, and I quite appreciated that, and it all has a kind of ethereal, dreamlike sequences in some ways of this movie. I think the cast here are very game. They, especially our female cast, who don't have particularly flattering roles, let me just put it like this, but they still kind of really commit, and I think for the most part the acting is fairly solid, and it's very much a visual film because there's not a lot of dialogue within this movie, and you know, you're kind of watching people's actions and things like this, and it almost, you know, almost plays more of a psychological way. The way that these kind of like this feral family are breaking down their kind of this guy and you know, ultimately kind of indoctrinating him into their kind of their way of life and things like this. There are a couple of moments of kind of violence and gore punctuated through the movie. It's not particularly a gory film. Or a violent film in many ways, but when we do see it, I think it does it to a kind of, you know, it hits the kind of the mark and does it pretty well. But what doesn't work with this movie feels like the first half of a film stretched out to be a full film. So let me go into a little bit more detail why I say this. This movie feels like it's only part of a story, and you kind of like, it's so stretched out and ultimately becomes quite dull. So we have this, the majority of this film is this guy kind of being kept in this cabin and slowly kind of forced into becoming part of their family, with very little dialogue, practically none, and we don't really get a lot happens, if we're being completely honest. It's very much kind of like this family kind of going about their weird kind of like cannibal feral life and forcing this guy to kind of go along with it, you know, ultimately kind of raping him a few times and things like this. But we don't get a hell of a lot of plot progression. It kind of feels like it's, you know, with a film like this, I'd expect, okay, they're going camping, the guy gets kidnapped, you know, they kind of turning him into Plankface, but that's kind of where the movie stops. And then this is why I say it feels like half a film, because then you would think he may kind of like do all these despicable things, but maybe try and slowly regain his humanity and things like this, which would be the second half, which we never see. So the movie is more or less the origin of Plankface, so to speak. And like I said, the artwork literally spoils it for you, because that's really what the movie leads up to. It doesn't really lead anything beyond that. It's just showing you this guy is being kind of like brainwashed, if you like, to become this kind of Plankface. Now, at first I thought there may well be a supernatural element to it, and that's kind of why he turned into ultimately like a slasher, but it's not. And I didn't really understand how the guy ends up going from a completely unwilling participant to a murder, a slasher at the end of the day. It doesn't really seem like he just kind of goes there. One day he's kind of like resisting and ultimately a prisoner, and then he just kind of like just decides that he's just going to join them. And at first I thought maybe this is meant to be taking place over a long period of time. Didn't seem like it, but maybe I thought maybe you can kind of believe it if this movie is going to be taking place over a number of months or something like that. But then it has this end sequence where you realise that isn't the case, and it's probably taken a matter of maybe days. And thinking, well, it just doesn't ring true. It's just a little bit, the plot is so minuscule, and then I feel the what we do have, to me, isn't particularly well executed. I like the acting, but there are a few things here that I felt maybe some of the other, maybe we get a smattering of other people as well, maybe not quite as good, but for the most part I thought the acting was okay, but just here and there it just seems a little bit kind of like false here and there, all I'll say. To be honest with you, I found myself becoming very uninterested in this film as it was going on, and checking my phone, things like this, just because it wasn't holding my interest. The film as a concept is interesting, but I feel it was too elongated and I didn't have a lot of plot progression in it. No, there's not a lot of things happen within this movie. It needed to have a little bit more to it, a little bit more kind of going on. Either short on the kind of this part and make this like maybe the first 2 acts and have another act or whatever, or have another element within the movie, but it doesn't really feel like it's much. It feels like this is part of a movie that's been stretched out leading up to a part that doesn't exist. Overall, it's a little bit of an unsatisfying movie. I think what we see on screen is well made on a technical craft. The kind of the way these characters are depicted is interesting to a point, and there's an element of part of a story here, but as a whole, as a film in itself, it's quite dull and with not a lot going on. And then they shot themselves in the foot by ultimately, you look at the cover and you know exactly what's going to happen in this movie. So I'll give it a 4 out of 10. It was a little bit of a chore to sit through, although I will give it props for some technical prowess here. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.